I want to thank Daniel and Christoph for inviting me. I have worked with them in South Africa since 2008. We started. And it's been a very good experience to work with them. And we work on projects where we actually now do practical building work. And it is very exciting. I'm going to show you, and I'm not going to focus on participation and empowerment, because I just think that architecture is much more complex, and that there's a lot for young people for you to struggle with, to know what it is that you want to do and how you want to work as an architect. But I just put up that slide. It's a man who walks around. We've got lots of these interesting people in the world. And he walks around with this box of eggs, and he's got a Spanish dancer, and he's in South Africa. He's got the horn on his side. And for me, this is symbolic of life. People are different. People are what they are. And if you let them be something, they can do anything. The other thing is that you've just had the Charlie, you've had your journalists that were shot. And I think that as architects, we have a serious role to play in the world in terms of not reinforcing people's fears, but to try and get people to give up their fears. This is Cape Town, and it is the city, and it's a very urban European city, and yet we are in Africa. So it's very interesting. The architecture is very European in the city itself. And there's the philosopher and architect from Finland, Johanni Palasma. So, 10 minutes from the city, which is very urban and very universal and Western, we start getting areas where the majority of the people stay. And when I was studying as a student, my education was completely Western European. Nobody gave me any examples of what was going on in Africa. But we are in Africa. But when they teach, they show me Italian markets, they showed me the Open University in Berlin. So I knew everything about every architect in America and in Europe, but nobody tells you anything about Africa. So I started reading. And I think it's important because young architects often say, how do I find myself? And you can find yourself through cinema, through theatre, through poetry, through books. And this man, Wationga Ngugi, he used theatre to empower people in Kenya. So there was a lot of repression before Arab Moi, who was the leader, and he used theatre to get people to stop taking alcohol and drugs, and he really made people strong. And then they locked him up, and he was in prison for a year, and then he escaped out of the country. But he's a professor in English at Yale. But he writes, and he writes many books called Decolonizing the Mind. And I think we have all got a problem. We are very colonized up here. So it's very interesting to look at people outside of architecture. And it says here, culture is the product of people's history, but it also reflects their history and embodies a whole set of values by which people view themselves and their place in time and space. And I think that's so important. Our culture is being eroded. Modernism and certain sort of directions life is going in, we all start having to be the same. And I think it's really more important now that architects and young architectural students, that you have to get your own identity. It's really difficult, but you really have to, in your work, in your research, try and get your own identity. So this is a festival, a music festival in Langa. It's a township just outside Cape Town, and I do a lot of work in this area. But I just want to show you a few conditions that are universal. This condition can be anywhere. It can be in Africa, it can be in South America, it can be probably in France as well. But what's happening is there's less and less maintenance, there's an occupation of buildings in a different form. This used to be a hostel for men, and now it's people living in it, and they just throw their rubbish on the outside. This is our transport. In South Africa, we don't have public transport. We have private transport. It's very problematic because if they strike, there's no transport. So it's a very controlled system. This is that same building I showed you earlier on, and I just wanted to show you the density of how people live and how they occupy. Can you put some of the light off because you can't actually see the slides? Just maybe something in the front is too light. Yeah. So I just want to give you a bit of the context so that you see where we are working and where we come from. This is on the outside of Johannesburg. It's just outside. Johannesburg is our capital city. It's where all the money is, the economy is, the stock exchange. There's mines. There's millions of people, and it's a really vibrant city. It's a really good African city. But what they're doing is they make these they pull the wealth out and they make little expensive niveau-riche towns, and then the rest of the city is becoming very informal and it forms itself. That is a scene from outside of these hostels. Then what happens, you can see the little, I don't know if you see, but what our government does is they give you a toilet. So instead of giving you a house, they give you a toilet and you bring your own house and you build your house. So this is the very low level of provision of housing and infrastructure. Then this is if you have a salary and you get money and you can actually get a little bit of money and you can afford to pay something towards your house. But look, every house looks exactly the same. That is real architecture. And then there's something that I'm intrigued by, and that even just finishing studying, I realized that I really don't know. So to study architectural conditions, to study the conditions in Africa, the way people make things, the way they inhabit space. And it's a really nice exploration and a nice discovery. This is in Cairo. It's a group of people. There's about 70,000 people who live in this accommodation. They built it all themselves. They are called the Zeppelin. So what they do is they take the refuse, all the rubbish from Cairo. They go and collect it. They get up 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. They go with little trucks and little bicycles, and they go into Cairo and they fetch all the rubbish in Cairo. And they bring it back and they work the rubbish. They make something. They redo the plastic, they redo the steel, they're either making pipes, but they're taking all the waste from the city of Cairo and they're reworking it. Well, they do 40%. We have been working there and doing workshops with the people who work there. And this village was started 30 years ago by the Coptic Church. The church started to come up with an economic system of how people can actually survive instead of just sitting and not having a life. So through the process we discovered that people really wanted public spaces because they've got lots of houses, but there's little cafes, but there's no lights. So one of the things they asked in the workshop was that they would like some public spaces to be developed and some lights. So what I'm getting at is that you're not always going to do a building. Maybe sometimes you don't do a building. So this is some solar panels that you saw in the previous image, and then here is the workshop was done by Bijoy Jain, and there's at the moment an exhibition in Bordeaux about some of his work. But I think the work that he does that's really good is not in the exhibition, and it's work like this where he goes and does workshops with all the young ladies, and they've got a factory now and they make unbelievable light fittings. Look at that. They also have a website, and that they're actually selling some of these light fittings internationally on the website. Can you see the rubbish? That's how they live. Every morning you cannot actually move because every truck is just filled with rubbish. So it's a very strange concept, but we are going to have to start thinking differently about how we do things in the world. And sometimes we can learn lessons from these kind of situations. I think then we go to a city like Shanghai where we were very privileged to work with Wang Shu, and he was telling us the story where this had a really good texture, it was a beautiful city, and they just came with bulldozers and flattened it and built this modern city. So in the same way, this is 5 hours south from Shanghai, where there's a typical Chinese fishing village, and it's got a really nice scale and a nice quality, and we were working with him to revitalize a harbor. The government wanted to turn it into an artist's, they wanted to leave the working harbor, but put some tourism activities next to it. So we were just looking at what are the kind of things and the way people live, what is it that they do. And we were, as a group, there were 10 of us, we decided to try and recycle as many of the buildings, because the tradition in development, I don't know what it's like in France, but in China, they come with a bulldozer, and in 3 days they can bulldoze the whole of, it's like 15 square kilometers and there's nothing. They just come. And it's completely flattened. So the thing for architects, I think, more and more is that we're eroding our culture and our history. It doesn't matter whether you're in South Africa or whether you're in Sweden or in China, it's happening everywhere. And this is an incredibly lovely building with a very nice scale, and we managed to motivate that we could keep the building as a ship museum and to tell the history and the memory of that area. So what happened is on the left, you can see is the building. We also introduced a new ship, but to keep all the old walls and then to do something around it that sort of transformed it. This is just some of the images. And why I'm showing you this is that when we finished the project, all of us had the same principles of keeping the old and restoring it and revitalizing it with a lot of memory. The government sold it to a developer, and in 3 months, he bulldozed every single building. So not one of the buildings that we all spent more than a year presenting, keeping, motivating, is just demolished. And they're just building everything. They're changing the plans to suit their mentality, and it's just going to be the same as everything else. This is Cape Town, and the first image I showed you was there at the top where we could see Table Bay and the CBD. And then I really want to focus on this area where the 2 biggest circles are, because that's where most of our work is. Khayelitsha is a township. There's at least 1 million people living in informal structures. And people have to travel from Khayelitsha to come and work in Cape Town. So the lady who works for me stays in Khayelitsha, but she stays in a house. But she leaves at 5, she gets up at 5 o'clock, she leaves at 6 o'clock to get to work at 9 o'clock. And some days the train doesn't work because somebody stole the copper, so we don't have train. And at the moment, every day, we have 3 hours of no power in the whole country. So you can't get anywhere. If you're going to rely on train transport, you can forget it. So life is becoming really, really difficult for poorer people than for the wealthy that have cars. This is an aerial image of Khayelitsha. And just to show you how people are informally inhabiting the space. Here you can also see when we had the soccer, we had World Cup soccer in 2010. So guess what they did? They built a big soccer stadium for billions of euros, and they give the people here toilets, plastic toilets. That was the urban intervention. So the planners and the architects in South Africa cannot cope with this enormous sort of people are coming in from the rural areas and settling around the cities where they try and find some work and they try and find a school for their children. But it's the spaces in between these buildings that I want to learn from. I want to see what is it that I can learn from the people that have nothing, and what can we do with nothing. So this is incredible. Just look at the way it's all recycled paper. When you go to the factory that makes the tins, at the end of the roll, there's some paper they throw away. So people go and fetch it, they make insulation, they put cardboard, and then they put this on the inside. So inside the house is probably thermally better than many of the other places. And then this is fantastic. I mean, here you've got your hero above your bed, and you think this is maybe something you can wash the dishes with. So it's this collage of life, It's how do I see myself? And another image. Look at the everything is there. She's making a plan. It's be inventive. It's find a solution. Don't wait for other people. There's nobody telling them how to do it. They find their own solution. So we had a very nice project that was irritating the government and the officials, because we worked with ESA, it's a school of architecture in Paris, and with Ljubljana in Slovenia. They came, and we took some students from South Africa, and we took 2 golf courses, which was on, as you come into Cape Town, there's a nice green belt. So you keep the poor people outside, and you make a nice green golf course, so that 300 people can play golf, and you keep the poor people on the other side. So what we did is we said to the students, they had 4 days, they had to bring 300,000 people into this 2 golf courses. And it was fantastic. It was just, the energy was so good. The kind of solutions the students came up with were really fantastic, because there's already beautiful plants and there's landscape, and it was really beautiful. It's such a beautiful area. And the government is trying so hard. They have got hundreds of officials appointed to deal with urbanization. They talk about strategies. They've talked for 20 years, and they cannot solve the problem. And they're not prepared to take land that is on the city and turn it into communities. So this was another student group. We had an exhibition on the Friday. We managed to get an exhibition space in the city so we could invite everybody. And I think it was just really very nice. 1 week is nothing, but there's Table Mountain as you drive in from the airport. The golf courses are now inhabited by a community. So this is the area in Langa where we work. These red brick buildings are the hostels. And in the 50s, in 48 when apartheid was started, they moved the women to the rural areas and they moved the men into the cities. So the men had to provide labor. And in the 80s, the women started moving into the urban areas to join the men. So in this community, there were 38 children from the age of 11 to 30 that had killed each other in gang fights. So they have 4 gangs, and they go in a space like this outside, because you saw the accommodation. They have no life. So they make a square like this, and the one gang is there, and the one here, and the one there, and then they just fight. So they said they make their own team. And we started working with them, and for 2 years, we had workshops every single week. For 2 years, we talked, what do you want? And we started, they wanted drumming, they wanted weightlifting, so slowly we started giving them some of these equipments. They then identified that they wanted a youth center, and we found one of those old hostels, and we always reconstruct and recycle. We only get rid of the material that's not healthy, like the roof was asbestos, so that we didn't use, we removed it, but the bricks and the structure we reused. So this was the youth center at the end that we finished. It was in 1989 that we started working here. And it was very interesting because the site was very tight, and there was a cooking school, a gym, a library for career guidance. A lot of these gangsters landed up leaving. In 3 months, there was not one more fight. They stopped fighting and they started focusing on making this thing a success and making it work. Here you can see the inside. We just lifted the side with the red steel. The black is the old steel that was in the wall. And we let natural light in. So you can see, because there's so little electricity, and often places like this, they never had electricity. So we had to make reflective surfaces so the white reflects the daylight in. And you can see there was table tennis and a whole lot of activities could take place. Here we're busy designing the floor. So we made a pattern so that they could design the floor in the foyer themselves. And again, I just want to show you the detail of the simple. We don't have money. Every single project we do, we make a business plan and we raise the money, because nobody really wants to get involved in poor areas. So this was just in 1991 when the building was finished, and at the back is the wall. We built a school behind it, and the school had 1,300 children in it. It was very successful until 3 years ago. 3 years ago, a man came into my office and he said that he doesn't like the building and he's going to break the building down. So he is a contractor and he came with a crane and with a big truck and jackhammers, and it took him about 2 weeks, and he broke the building down with his own people. And that is, at the moment, even less than understanding. So it's terribly sad. People don't understand that we actually live in an incredibly violent society. This is a small library. In the apartheid, there was no libraries in these communities. You're not allowed to do art. So the schools had very strange subjects. You could do language, and you could do some funny subjects that you could actually not get a job one day. So this was the library that was run by some young people in the community, and they then worked with us. They made the bricks and they built this building. It's a small cultural center in Nyanga, and it was a very exciting place for about a year until we had an election. And after the election, the community started coming, because the people who won the election was not the same people who were the leaders in this project. And it was a political fight. So the politics just came and took over, and it was actually quite sad. But it's quite interesting, because a Swiss architect came to South Africa about 5 years ago, and he said, could he use the rubble of the building and build another building on the same piece of land? So he's used the broken pieces from the old building, and he's building the new building. And you can just see how inventive it is. So there's always something happening. This is a meat market in Bugalentu. So we worked with the people, and they phoned me and said that they can't work in the rain. They've been working like this since 1960, and the police will come and steal their meat. So the police come and grab the meat and then leave them in the rain. So it was a terrible situation. This is mostly women that were running their businesses here. So this is a typical African market. They make a wood fire. They have something that is called a smiley. So they take the head of the animal, the goat, and they cut it in half and they eat the brains. But it's called a smiley, which is like this because it looks like the animal is smiling at you. You can see in the middle there is the sheep's heads that they eat. So this is the kind of meeting. So we would have a meeting and we would find somebody who could speak Xhosa, because in this market nobody spoke English or Afrikaans. So we had to find somebody who could talk the language of the people and present the project. And it was fantastic because I had a lovely Italian market. Now I come from university, they teach me how to do Italian market. On the corner, square over here. So we presented the Italian market and they said, no. They all were laughing at us. So they said, no, we want at the back, they want protection. So they want a wall with shops, they call it a spaza shop, and they want a petrol station, like a gas station. They want a gas station roof. So they were very articulate about what they wanted. So here you can see, we listened to them, we made the spaza shop at the back, and we had the roof like a gas station. So here you can see the kind of things they are trading with. We are now working with them and we're going to fix the market because it's about 20 years and there's no maintenance, so we're going to go and help them maintain the market. There you can see the relationship with Table Mountain. So as an architect, I didn't go and do a flat roof like a gas station. I went and I said to myself, what is it that we can do that takes it one step further? So people often say, when you are listening to people, do you just do what they tell you? No, you listen and you say, okay, I have skills. I've got references and I can turn it into something different. So this is in Langa, the first place that I showed you. We worked in 1994 with the local community. They were very, very strong. And they wanted to build an arts and culture center. And we ran many, many workshops. And this model at the bottom is a 1 in 50 model. And we used it so that we could design the mosaic and put it on the model and test it and show people what they were going to do. So we use a lot of models, but they're not very sophisticated. They are quite crude. So this was an interesting process because the people who were older, the older women, particularly, and the older men, they were in this township, they wanted to build a traditional hut because they feel their culture and their identity is not with them. They're in this urban setting and there's nothing about their past. So what we do is the young people, they want cell phones, iPhones, BMW. Their images that they came to the meeting was like, oh, you know, we don't have that kind of money, but we're going to have to do something. So it was interesting that you have culture and tradition and contemporary architecture. So how do you bring these things together? And what we did is we made that cone shape. So the old people are happy because for them they've got a representation of the traditional hut. But anybody from all over the world can come because the shape is a universal shape. So what we also always do in our projects is we try and make an economic activity. So in this case we took 20 young people and we trained them to do all the mosaic work. You saw the outside and the inside was mostly done with 20 young people, and we had about 4 qualified artists who came and worked with us as well. So here you can see this front. This is all made with ceramics that are thick. It's all baked ceramic, that big mural over there. And that round thing with a maze in it is called Guga Stebe, and that is the name of the project. So it's a Xhosa idiom which invites anybody to come in and discuss new ideas. So it's something I wouldn't have thought about. But the people who gave the building the name decided it must be symbolic and invite people to come in and share their knowledge. So this is the back outdoor space, and this was a ceremony that we had to give people certificates because the whole building was built by the local people in that community. So the people who built the building, other than just the management of the contractor, I would say 95% of the people who built the building were residents within 6 kilometers of the building. So we always try and do that. This is the foyer, and the foyer is now used because what's happened is that every single tourist that comes to Cape Town wants to go into the township. So 3,000 people a day visit the building. You can see, sometimes there's like 1,000 people at one time. The building is 800 square meters. It's tiny. It's a very small building. And the budget was very small. And yet we had the World Design Capital last year, and most of the functions was done at this building. It was bizarre because there's not enough design stimulation and any African reference in Cape Town. This is an exhibition with a gold. She's from Holland, a lady called Carin Toulouse, and she said that she will come to South Africa, but on one condition, that she can have the gold exhibition in a gallery in town, but she also wanted it in the gallery here. And then she came and ran workshops with the people with gold jewelry. And everybody said, you're going to get shot, you're going to get killed, you can't come into this area with gold. And it was fantastic. People made beautiful things. So the next step is the people we raised money with a magazine in Germany, and the students from Aachen and Düsseldorf and Virginia Tech in Atlanta in America decided that they would build a theater at the back for children. So I worked with them and we did some workshops. And this is just the typical workshop that we had with students. This is what happened. The blue building is the Guga Stebe Phase 1. And the red building at the back is the container building that they're busy building. The students are building the whole building themselves. So they organize the materials, they do the building work, they really are trying to do the whole thing, and it's about a 2-year process. So this is just showing some students from South Africa working with students from Germany. We really try and encourage collaboration and real understanding of materials. This is a panel that gets put on the outside of the container. The theater is made of big containers that are recycled. And then this is the acoustic, this is the insulation on the outside of the building from a thermal point of view, and then we clad it. So here you can see, and these are the trusses that are on the top of the building. We worked with a big company called Mytech. They were amazing. They helped make the trusses. So these are 2 standard trusses, but we bolted them together, and the students worked out that 8 students would pick up the truss. So it's all about discovering. It's discovering your own strength and discovering what the weight of materials are. Here you can see the students at the top. I always wonder what their parents would say, because you can see lots of health and safety. Lots of helmets, lots of harness. It's quite scary, because here they are just building at a height that is 6-7 meters off the ground. So this shows you the context, and you can see the informal settlement forming behind the property. And the whole area at the back was flooded. So through the project, we managed to get a pipe. You can see the pipe lying at the back. We managed to get the government to put a pipe in. They did nothing. They didn't help us with anything, the government. We raised all the money ourselves, and the only thing we got from them was a pipe. So they put a pipe to take the rainwater away, which was fantastic, because it is an expensive thing, and all those houses used to flood. So in the process of doing one thing, we solved another problem at the same time. This young man on top of the roof, his name is Carlton. He was 18 at the time, and he was from my office, a second-year student, and he landed up managing for 3 months the whole site. He was managing about 30 or 40 students under him, and it was incredible, because he never knew he had the strength. He was sitting, he was looking, and the first time he came to me, he said to me, "You are too hard on me. My mother says I don't have to work for you." So he said, "I'm not working for you anymore." And he said, "I'm going home now, bye-bye." So I said, "You're not going home. You want to be a weakling, or do you want to have fun in your life?" Anyway, a month later, he came back, he gave me a big hug, and he said, "Thank you for being hard with me." And I think sometimes you will feel that people are hard with you. But the harder we are, the more you're going to develop yourself, and the better you're going to be. Because this guy, he was the top student. Unfortunately, the day when he finished on the site, he drove home and he was killed in an accident. But he was a 19-year-old kid who he lived every moment of his life. So I want you to get the courage from somebody like that. I mean, he never held a drill in his life. Here he is putting a roof on. So this is the next step. We did experiments. So we came with the fruit crates. Most of the things are either from the ground or recycled. A lot of the stuff is recycled elements. You can see how those panels came on for insulation, and we're doing experiments with the wood paneling. This is the inside. With the wood panels in winter, we had to store them inside until the rain would stop. It's incredible. We've had exhibitions, we've had parties, we've had performances. So as we build, we use the space. We don't wait until it's finished. We're just using it the whole time. Here you can see that's the cladding that they've come up with, the students, and there you can see that roof that floats across the top. And every space is used, either for exhibition or for performance, but in a different way. It's not a conventional way of using it. These are the gumbo dancers. We had the World Design Capital, and some designers came and designed costumes and made costumes for the gumbo dancers. So we try and be interactive. We work with metal workers, we work with musicians, we work with poets. It doesn't matter. The bigger your team, the richer your product. This is a project on the right-hand side, that one with the white at the diagonal. The red is the building that was existing, and we were asked to build one room. A man came to me and he said, "Can you build one room? 36, like the floor here." He said, "We are all in wheelchairs, we're disabled, and we want a workshop." So we had a discussion, and we had more of a discussion, and eventually we built about 2,500 square meters. Because the more we had a discussion, the more the people, everybody came. Some nights we were 700 people in a meeting. And we would just talk. It wasn't like fancy. And the old people said, "Yeah, but we stand in the rain. We don't want to stand in the rain anymore. We want to have our pension inside." It was a conversation. So here you can see the outside. This is on pension day. 10,000 people come and they get their pension. And there's a market, a very good market on the outside. And the government now has come and put a fence to stop the market, because they have a new law. No more markets. I don't know what the government think they're doing. So this is the inside, where at least 1,000 people can come and they can sit down and they can get their pension in a dignified way. So I think the other thing that we need to speak about is dignity. One of the core values in our office is to restore dignity. Because if you see what other people have to go through, we are responsible for the world. I I mean, we are there. We're urban planners, we're architects. But when we look around us, we are responsible to comment on the environment. This is the internal street that joins the old building and the new building. And look how nicely yellow the government has painted it. So all the concrete is yellow. So I like it because I think it's nice that they've done something. You know, it's very sad when you see a building that deteriorates. So this is the street, the internal street, and these concrete walls are used as architectural elements that link the old and the new. So on the right-hand side of the slide is the old building, and on the left-hand side is the new hall, the big hall where they play basketball and they have activities. And can you see, voila? It's not a Photoshop, it is they came and painted everything yellow. So it's very nice. That's just the energy outside and that has been destroyed by the fence. It took me many, many meetings to explain the urban quality to the government. And they said, yes, fine, chooks. And it's not 3 or 4 years later they put a fence around it. Then we go into the city because I think it's really important. A lot of people think that the work we do, you can only do in the township. And that's really not true. The work we do in the city. I do at universities. The process we use anywhere. I do a lot of work at universities where academics don't even want to talk to each other, and we use the process of the building to get them to talk. This is one of the funkiest streets in Cape Town. So if you ever come to Cape Town, you go and visit Long Street. It never sleeps. It goes from 6 in the morning until 6 the next morning. So it just goes. There's lots of cafes, there's lots of bars, lots of clubs, and it's just going the whole time. It's really active. And the government building, we were asked to revitalize the government, the provincial government building. It's in the street. There, you can see what it looks like in relation to the other energy that is there. So we were not the full architectural team. We were appointed with another architect, but we were allowed to give some of the main conceptual ideas. And after that, we sort of stood back. So this was the facade that was really hideous. I don't think our solution is very good, but anyway, I'll show you. This is under the building where the public works. They were busy delivering rubbish and picking up the rubbish, and all the police cars were parked. Now this is where the public have to walk through. So we made a motivation and asked them if we can't make it an indoor space that people could use more effectively. So that's just the outside, and on the right-hand side you can see what we did to the inside. We made an information center, so if you come to Cape Town, you can just go and hang out, you can use the internet, you can get information about the city, and there's a restaurant at the bottom level, and there's an outside artwork that will come, which was an art competition. This is a building that we finished now, at the end of last year. It's a clinic, and you can see the 3 different languages. So we have to use quite sort of simple ways of communicating the projects so that people can understand. And here again you'll see that we push the whole building to the back so that we avoid the fence, and that you go in, that you have a pre-waiting, a main waiting, because people go to the clinic at 6 or at 5 in the morning and then they stand in the rain. So we were motivating to the government to do something that they don't have to stand in the rain. So this is just the organization, and I think you can see how the lessons we learned from how people organize their informal settlement. We are trying to see how we can use that to organize a bigger building. So this is a health center, it's a comprehensive health center, and the government wouldn't let us talk to the community until the end. So just before we started building, I managed to get the chief director to come and explain the building. So sometimes you have to stand behind the politician. You don't always have to be the one explaining. So there, I want to show you on that wall, can you see there's a section? So we made a section and we color it up. It was 5 meters long. But the people could go and stand there and see the whole thing. It's a picture, it's a way of communicating. So here you can see the people from the community came to ask questions, to understand the project. And the government said it's one of the only ones where they didn't have trouble during construction, where the project was stopped every week. So we have a lot of political problems. In this particular community, it's called Delft. It's a low-income housing. People live in informal settlements and in RDP houses. And every person has a gun. Everybody. They have guns, and they walk around with their guns, and they're selling drugs, and there's prostitution. They shoot children. I mean, it's like, I don't think anybody can ever imagine. My sister is a teacher, and in December she phoned me one day, and she was teaching 2 kilometers from here, and she said, I've just watched a child being shot in front of me, an 11-year-old child. So the complex nature and the violence in these communities is just something. This is the man that I identified who helped me to organize the builders. So what we did is we took all the bricklayers, we took all the tilers, the electricians, and we made them into small companies. And we made a file, and we gave the file to the builder. So before the builder would go and get another bricklayer, he would first go and see who lives in that community that he can use. So what we tried to do is strengthen the economic power of the people who live in that area. And this is a guy that I found, so he could manage that process for me. So it's not about you managing everything. You have to find collaborators. You've got to find people who become part of your team. Here are the people that this guy that's facing us, he was the one in Gugasitebe that was 20 years old. Now he's training people on our projects. So he has continuously remained involved. They've done fancy hotels, 5-6-star hotels. They go and do their sort of sauna areas, and they're doing a lot of these tiling projects. And here you can see the mosaic work through the entrance. The clinic is called Symphony Way. So it's completely different from any clinic. In fact, the government is scared of this building. They keep on saying at the health authorities that this is unusual. They normally just know how to go in the front door and go down a straight passage. And they're actually very nervous of what this building is going to do and how the people are going to occupy it. So this was what the theme that people decided, is that they wanted to bring nature. There's very few trees in this area. So the whole idea is that we would plant trees, and we would put trees and nature outside, and not symbols of clinic and health and stethoscopes and people being sick. We want people to come and be happy and healthy. That's not what this is about. It's about a place where people can be healthy and not sick. So this is the pre-waiting. And here you can see, so in the mornings people can come, they can change their baby's nappy, they can sit here, they're out of the rain, they can move in and out, and then the main entrance door will open at about 7:30 in the morning. So people go at 5 because they're scared that they will not see, they won't see a doctor. I mean, you don't see a doctor. You're going to see a nurse, and you're going to get your tablets. The level of at least 600 people a day, between 600 and 1,000 people a day will come and see this clinic. So the other thing is they had the people with infectious diseases like AIDS, they have them in a separate space. So I said, no, when you go and climb into the train or the taxi, you're sitting next to the man with TB and with AIDS. So you can't make them in a separate clinic. So we put it together. And we have to see, because when the health authorities come to this building, they just shake their heads. So this is the inside where the people will be waiting. On the left-hand side is the pharmacy. So you come and collect your tablets. They have to. Some of it is for free, but some of it you have to pay a small amount, maybe €2, to come and collect your medication. But you have to come every month. So every month people come. The people who have tuberculosis come every day, because what they discovered is the people don't take their tablets. So they just get sick and more sick and infect more people. So this is the waiting area. And then outside we have a courtyard, because we do a lot of theatre. And there's a lot of very good theatre groups who can do educational projects around health in theatre. So we try and encourage that. So this is the outside. So at night there's a lot of magic. When you drive past the building, the mirrors and the mosaics come alive. So you can see, so we want people to just be able to freely walk around the building. But I'm quite sure in about 6 months it's going to have a nice fence right in front. You can see at night it's completely open. It has been open for like this for about 6 months, and nothing is stolen, nothing is broken, nothing is vandalized, and nobody can understand it because the government says the community is going to break the building, they're going to vandalize everything, but they've done nothing. It's just been standing. They will open it hopefully next month. This is a workshop in Sweden, and I thought it would be just important to show you that we do a lot of work with students. This is teachers and architects and residents. There are 16 residents and about 16 students from architecture and students from education. So we try and mix people so that they learn from each other. And we did a fantastic workshop. The people were from 16 different countries, and they didn't talk to the students on the first day, and then we mixed them up and we played some games. And then the man who went to buy the model building material bought pasta to build the models. So the architects couldn't build the models because they can only build models with fancy machines and everything. And the teachers were a little bit scared. And then the women, who were very good at baking and cooking, they built the models. They came up with a project for a restaurant. They wanted to do a restaurant where they could show their culture through their cooking. So they built these beautiful models out of spaghetti and lasagna and pasta, and the teachers went and decorated it. So at the end, the architects were like sitting and watching this. So all of a sudden, they all started respecting each other through one small action. So you never know what it is that's going to be the action that's going to make the breakthrough. What happened then is the students helped these 16 women, and they did a business plan. They applied for money through the EU, and they've actually now got a restaurant in Gothenburg next to the university. So they're cooking the meals from their country, and they're providing some good food to the students. This is a workshop in France, in Fonneville-Denemont, where we had a very nice process, and we got the people from the village to talk, and they designed with us, and it was really, really exciting. Unfortunately, when Sarkozy came into power, he stopped the process, and they withdrew the money, so we stopped the project. This is a process in Cape Town where we worked with a community who wanted to design a big whale to stop people to stop in their community. But what happened as well is that we made them so strong that the government wanted them to sign a paper to build a golf course, and they refused to sign the paper. So the government cancelled their project. So it's this thing of being manipulated continuously, and you will often come into that situation. This is one of the workshops we worked with Daniel and Christoph, where the morning we arrived, people were very aggressive. They were all standing there. They were all really... And then Kenya, he made a Tai Chi workshop, and he made exercises for 20 minutes. And for the rest of the project, we had no problems. No big problems. There are problems, but no big problems. Small problems. So it's about how do you see the crisis? How do you see the problem? How do you solve the problem to move forward, to move on? Here was some of the little girls that I worked with to do some mosaic. We walked around, we picked up things, and this is in an informal settlement. At the back there you can see the students are busy building the structure for the roof that would come on the outside. And the story I like telling about this is that the day the journalist came, I just happened to be at the gate, and the journalist said to me, "Where's your drawing? We want to photograph the drawing before we come and interview the people on the site." And I said, "I don't know, I don't think we have a drawing." So I don't think we had a drawing. Did we? No, we don't have drawings. So it's about doing. It's not about the drawing. It's about we architects, and we can demonstrate, and we can really have a major impact if we just do something. So this is a concept that I think is very dangerous, both sides. Both sides are equally dangerous, because top-down is fine, because you know what they're doing. But bottom-up is very corrupt, because the government uses this to hide. They make you think it's bottom-up. So they get a facilitator or a mediator to come and explain things to you, and then they say that is bottom-up. but there's nothing bottom up. So I think we discussed this yesterday. There's language in the architectural field at the moment that is extremely dangerous, and that you have to be very sensitive to how you interpret this language. So just to get back to the Eggman, I think everybody has got lots of energy and creative energy. And I think as architects, the big thing is how do we use each other's energy and get energy out of people to do creative things. Thank you.